From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me from France, Philippe Hummau. Philippe, very nice to be with me on the show today. I'm very humbled to have you. Thank you very much for joining. The way I like to do it, I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mehmet. I'm Philippe, CEO and co-founder of CrowdSec. And for my background, I come from this IT engineering school, right? So cybersecurity at Humeau, but it was like 25 years ago. So the landscape was fairly different, but I stuck to it. I love it. And I had a company in the past, an MSP. We were also doing a lot of intrusion testing, pen testing, red team, and so on. But nowadays, I'm really glad to be on the defensive part and to bring something new to the table.
Great. And thank you again for being with me today, Philippe. Now, you mentioned something about how the landscape have changed. So how did you see it evolve, from mainly cybersecurity threats perspective? So what was different, let's say, 10 years back from now?
Yeah, if you take, for example, a single IP address over the internet, and I did this test like 10 years ago, an IP address that would be absolutely random. So, like your home grade IP address that is distributed by your ISP or something like this, it would be scanned something along the lines of 700 times per day, right? The simple port scan to see if there's something new. Nowadays, we're more around 2.5K, 2,500. So it tripled already. And there's a permanent opportunism of all the nation states, the governments, their affiliated groups for some of them, to be aware of the constantly of the landscape and be able to react or act as they see fit to defend a political view of the world on our digital life, because this is what it is. I mean, we cannot anymore live without our digital surface. And I think nation states and states are very, very much aware of it. And they fight this gray zone war, as long as there are no bodies, they feel like it's not going to trigger a war anyway. So they can assault themselves, each other's online constantly, stealing IP, stealing property, stealing secrets and so on, because, hey, no bodies, so no official war declaration.
Yeah, it's completely a different place from where we were like 10 years back. And back to your point, like even the nature of it, I think of the attacks changed as well. So from your interaction with your customers, what are you saying that are their most pressing challenge is, especially when you deal with businesses? So what do you think is their most I would say thing that it would worry them the most?
Yeah, it ultimately depends on the business. Like we see as we speak right now, Mehmet, there is a DDoS happening on OpenAI.
Yes.
Be transparent on that. Their API endpoint is being hammered. We don't exactly know the nature of this DDoS, whether they are appetitive or network based. But for example, for OpenAI, their API endpoint and their SaaS services is their whole business stream. So it's critical. It's a life and death matter for them to be able to render the service online. Otherwise, no income, no IPO, blah, 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 or spec, whatever they will do. But, it's a loss of value right away and a lot of clients and business. For others, it is rather revolving around the private data. Like if you're a B2C selling something online, a e-commerce shop or something like this, losing your client database used to be bad, but now it's criminal, which is different from just having a problem with a moral problem. Now you also have a serious legal problem, right? So
Yeah.
so dependent on your business, but I don't see any business being totally safe if anything happens on their digital surface. Whether you're a plumber or Microsoft, doesn't change anything. You depend on your digital surface to work and to get an income.
Yeah, and to the point that you're mentioning, Philippe, which is, it's something we repeated on the show, and I have my, point of view on it since sometimes, even when I was at the corporate world, because you mentioned OpenAI. So OpenAI, yeah, people knows ChatGPT, but there are bunch of businesses that they rely, or startups maybe they rely on their APIs. So this becomes like a problem with supply chain. Like I use some tools actually for my podcast production, and I had to go to the manual work this morning, for example, to do some tasks, because none of the services that works with OpenAI is working good enough. That they have this. If you have the developer account with OpenAI, so you can go to the playground and you can do the. It's like their internal system, isolated system from the outside world. Yeah, but this is really, really a big issue. And people, I think they ignore these. I would say the impact of these attacks. You're losing, as you said, from revenue perspective, and it can affect, because you said maybe it will stop their IPO as well, 100%. Now, I know like you do and discuss a lot of things about leveraging open source security platforms. So, in your opinion, what are some of the advantages and some of the potential drawbacks of utilizing open source security platforms?
Well, the main advantages are transparency, because the code is clean. There are thousands of eyes looking into your code. There's no backdoor, no problem, no existential crisis in the making for yourself. Like not like SolarWind, close code. We don't know. Oh my God, there was a backdoor, even though they didn't want it. It was embedded by other people. So first of all, transparency, I'm pretty sure. The second thing is it's also very efficient to help you adapt your software to any kind of IT surface. So there are just so many stacks in the world, so many people using so many different technologies. It would be nearly impossible for us alone to be able to stick to all their surfaces. Now, because we have a community and because it's open source, people develop their own scenarios, their own connectors, their own parsers, and they can contribute to the software, making it more versatile than it ever was or ever would have been if it would be closed source software. So those are really two big pros in my eyes. And the last one, which is not related to open source, but is kind of a sibling, is it's free. One is not the other. We would all agree on that. But the fact that it's free, it allows it to have like a virality, because the first friction to adoption is money in our world. So when you can offer a software for free and find a business model around it that would sustain this kind of growth and help everyone, but also help yourself in the making, I think those are very virtuous business model. But the weakness, the vulnerability is here as well. I mean, if you cannot validate your business model as an open source software editor, it's first of all, it's really hard to find one, and second, it's really, really tricky to point you, because the community can backlash on you because you made this or that pain, and they felt like they are betrayed. Or at some scale, like larger scale, like Elasticsearch, Red Hat, and so on, there are so many people in the news lately that had to change their model because they couldn't meet the two ends at the end of the month, or on the P&L. So yeah, really tricky business model to balance, but they're full of virtues regarding cybersecurity.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one of the things I know that you like to discuss a lot is, uh, let me first, because I never asked this question. I know it's a very obvious question for people who are experts like us, but I mean, let's explain. I know it's a very obvious, but I want to hear it from an expert, because some of my audience, when I tell them this, hey, what do you mean 0-day attack? What do we mean by 0-day attack? And then I will relate this to the next question.
Yeah, so Zero-day attacks relates usually to attacks that are known from public sources like CISA or other CVEs like Vulnerability Database that are not known yet and that are exploited by cyber criminals actively. But good guys, good researchers have not found it yet. So we see spots, we see traces of something being exploited, and we never knew it was vulnerable in the first place. So this is what we would call a 0-day. It's a private research, that is at large somewhere and able to compromise things, even though we don't know about it yet.
Yeah, yeah. So this is always why I tell, because to your point to the previous question, when you write code, you never know if there is a backdoor, and if someone, or maybe even a bug that no one's discover it. And we always tell people, the bad actors actually, they do research as well, and they spend time and money to find about these. And their number one goal is to find actually these 0-day attack. And there isn't 0-day because no one knows about them. Now this is where you talk about the multiplayer firewalls. And the concept of having this to make it different than the traditional firewall solution to avoid 0-day attacks. So can you explain that? What do you mean by the concept of multiplayer firewalls?
Yeah, so lately I'm using an image that is, arguably maybe not the best because of the world state right now, but it's still very easy to understand. So when you receive an attack at your border on exposed services, on workloads that are running in the cloud, in DMZ, in your infrastructure somewhere, and that they receive public requests, you can compare that to having a rocket fired at you. So there is a part of it, a missile, sorry. So there is a part of it which is basically a rocket, right? Propeller that pushes the payload toward you. And there is a payload which is eventually an exploit, a logic fault, a brute force attack, a DDoS attack, whatever it is. So if you separate this in two parts, the rocket is where CrowdSec tried to act. So we tried to disable the vehicle that will carry the attack to your border. And this vehicle over the internet is public IP addresses, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know any other way to actually carry attacks from A to B, except if you are like close to the physical building and you try to hack airways like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and so on. But other than that, if you're at distance, you have to go through public IP addresses. And then there's a second part, which is a payload, right? The payload eventually reaches your own workload exposed over the internet, and you don't want it to explode and create damages around you. So CrowdSec added this cybersecurity software that read the logs, and we look for payload traces, right? Things that are bad behavior, things that you don't want to see happening at your place. But by doing this in a network effect, by networking all the security engine, doing this and collecting logs and reading logs and blocking attacks at scale, we create a network effect that is disabling the rocket part of it. By diffusing actually the payload in many places, we also see what are the carriers and the vehicle, the rocket, the public IP addresses that are launching those payloads. And then we create this ultra-curated block list that we share back to all the members of the network. So they tell us who aggressed them, and in return, and how. And in return, we tell them who is aggressive toward everyone else so that they are protected before those IP addresses even reach their doorstep.
Okay, I got it. So is this something similar to what we know as the threat intelligence service? Is it similar to that?
Yeah, so threat intel often relates to feeds that you receive. They are often curated and of various quality, but they react in months or weeks, eventually days at best. CrowdSec is a fully dynamic system, so it reacts below a minute, sub-minute. So if an IP address becomes extremely aggressive very quickly, it will be part of the block list extremely quickly as well. So, and also CTI, if you ask people with the luck to partake into this Google for Startup program, and we had Mandiant people from Mandiant as mentors. And we asked them like, hey, what would be a definition of CTI? And it's like, this when we search for traces, when we search for what happened, in a breach, know how it happened, then we dig into the CTI to it. And CrowdSec, in a sense, is proactive. It's not reactive. It's not about dead body counting. It's about preventing it from happening in the first place. So I would say we play in the TI field globally, threat hunting, but more in a proactive manner than a reactive manner, more as a block list and a database of information. So yes, we partake into this world, but maybe in a bit of a different way.
Got it. So it's like more an early, sign before actually the bad things start to happen. If I understood it right from you. Okay, great.
Yeah, CTI, if you have things in your logs, like you use a CTI because you saw IP A, B, C, D in your logs, it's something happened and so on. You dig into it, you want to know what happened, when it happened, and so on and so forth. It's too late already, right?
Right.
Something happened already. So potentially it's too late. And CrowdSec goal is to actually make it too early. That blocked at the border, it doesn't even reach the payload, the workload in the first place. And if it reaches the workload in the first place, you still have something to diffuse the payload locally, which is a security engine that will still try to kill the connection to this public IP address. So yeah, it's slightly different position, even though I agree we played this field.
Right. So, and I believe, because you identified this bad IP, so it will be in the firewall rule, so it will be blocked before actually making the payload reach the the destination, right?
Globally, yes. After there's a lot of difficulties. Like say you're, for example, eShop, a web commerce system, and we tell you, those IPs, don't worry, we know they are bad. They're like, yeah, but you know what? Some of them are VPNs. Some of them are residential proxies. And we still want them as a customer potentially. Yes, those IP may carry some danger, but we still want them as customer potentially. What is your real stake as an e-commerce system? Like avoiding to get credit card stuff, people try credit card and making fake buying, avoiding credential stuffing, like people try to use the credential of others to buy things for themselves, and to get your system down or scalping. These kind of attacks are very specific. But maybe the rest you don't feel so much. You don't care much about, I don't know, VoIP scanning, blah blah blah. It's not your stuff. So instead of just dropping it into your firewall, you may want to send CAPTCHA in return to the IPs. That would clean out codes fairly quickly and fairly efficiently. And do you really need to block them entirely? Maybe not. Some are harsher. Some they put it in the BGP block list. You don't even get routed to this place. Your packet is in the void instantly. So there are many ways of using these remediation components, and we leave it to the client to decide what is their own strategy. And some of them actually have a hybrid approach. Like they don't want any danger or whatever on their VPN endpoint, corporate network. This is so precious. Nothing should happen. We just drop them, period. And on their e-commerce front, they're like, yeah, okay, everything credit card related, bots related, and now we discard and we send them a CAPTCHA, and for the rest, that's fine. So, mixed strategy as you see fit.
Great. Now, I think the natural question that comes maybe next. So, why do you believe there's an increase in size of the attacks that comes from these malevolent IP addresses? Like, is it like from the hackers, or let's say the bad actors perspective? Is it the easy thing to use it as a vehicle, or like why? I mean, do you believe it's like this increase that we started to see recently?
So there are more people active in this field than there used to be. And what I still say actually to most companies is you don't need to be a Google or Microsoft or Cloudflare to be attacked. I mean, if you're the next door plumber and you make some turnover using the internet, and someone can scalp 5,000 euros from you by spending not so much time on the attack and not so much resources, they will try. It's like the mob. They have to climb the ladder. They don't become the boss and the godfather the next day. They have, to make their peace and cloud before they are efficient and try to take down the NSA. It's not the end boss you take on the first day in your job. So there is this. There are more and more and more those trying out to, make money out of these cybercrime activities. And also, I think it's really important to consider that IP addresses are a vehicle, and it's becoming increasingly harder for them to actually just use VPN endpoints or stuff like that, because first of all, they are filtered. Second, they want to stay under the radar, and a lot of VPNs, you are not at liberty of paying in cryptocurrency, or they have KYCs. They want to know their customer, they want to know who you are, and you're not really at ease with telling them who you are and why you're using the IP address. Or if you look at AWS, for example, they make you pay for public IP addresses now. And Google is already the same, and Azure as well. So if you want to rent a public IP address, it's 3.6 euros a month, so give or take, that you would have to spend. And it's expenditure, it's OPEX for you as a cybercrime group, right? So specifically if you need a lot of them, because when we see a meaningful group, usually they count thousands of IP addresses, not one or two. And so it's easier for them to rent them on the darknet, to go and as there are initial access brokers, there are also brokers that are giving you a bunch of compromised machines that you can control on distance and carry your attacks for you. So what they're doing, they run them, right? Only 5% of the attacks are really carried through VPN IP addresses, so far we can tell from our figures. So the rest is what is compromised servers. So how do you compromise a service? How do you get this munition, this ammo in the first place? Well, you constantly scan the internet. The day there is a CVE of vulnerability, you exploit it, you keep the server for yourself, and you write into the darknet of the others. That's why we see so much activity on this front.
This is very important one, Philippe, because I'm putting now myself, because people, they think that these IP addresses are machines which are owned by the actors, which majority of the time, to your point, they are not. So they are infected machines that they are using. Now, if I am someone new to the space, I mean, I'm a startup, and maybe I'm building, a SaaS, whatever. So I'm using some form of IP addresses because I'm using like public facing website and so on. Maybe I'm building on one of the hyperscalers and so on. So this should be worrying me, right? Because if my IP get blocked or get, let's say, labeled as bad, now, first, what is the best way I would know that my IP is now used? And second, how should I act as a business owner or like someone who owns this IP from your experience?
So if we speak CrowdSec here, we have this kind of feature. So we can tell you if your IP start to be reported by the network, which is already, something you do preemptively before it becomes an increasingly bigger problem. Second thing is preventive actions are always the best here. I mean, if you have to curate it later on, this IP already took a hit in terms of reputation. It will never be perfectly pristine, virgin again, ever. So prevention is really of the essence. Now, if you start being reported and if you start being blocked, your client, your user will start complaining to you that they can access your website, they can access your services, they can access their APIs and so on. And these are signals that potentially you ended up in some list. The way I would proceed as a business owner is to go to VirusTotal, right? A very famous website for that. They are aggregating tons of feeds, like I don't know, probably 100 or something like this. I type in my IP address or my domain name and see if it's reported by people, by companies, and who. And then I'll go to this company and say, hey, why am I reported? What's wrong? How can you help me? This is happening every day for us. Like people looking to the IP addresses on VirusTotal, connecting us and saying, okay, guys, it seems one of our servers is compromised. Can we discuss it? And can you remove this IP address? Because we've taken the preventive corrective action on those machines. Now, in the case of CrowdSec, the IP will be automatically cleared anyway, because it's only in the block list for as long as it is reported by the network. So when it stops being reported because it stopped being aggressive, it's removed anyway. But for other actors, it requires a manual treatment.
Yeah, so I think this is where the early, as you mentioned, preventive approach should be implemented. So on a high level, like what are the best practices usually to protect against these kind of attacks? I mean, to hijack their IPs and use it for bad actions.
Purposes. Well, In a general way, what you expose over an IP address would be usually one service only publicly, and eventually from filtered other IP addresses like management endpoint like SSH, VPN, whatever. So the service you are running is probably relying on several libraries, several softwares that you should monitor and be sure that they don't have a vulnerability or something like this. So this is fairly easy to do. There are tools and services that allow you to do this, to monitor your stack and your dependencies to see if there is ever a vulnerability that is published. Also, you have obviously to be looking from time to time to the CVEs that are touching your specific framework. Not all of them, because every day there are like 100, but at least the one that are concerning your technical stack. Obviously, you should update quickly, frequently, and have these backup strategies that allow you to be constantly up to date, because hey, you cannot be like 10 versions behind. Otherwise, you will pay it at some point. Technical debt is really what the leverage when they attack you and when they successfully compromise you. And then everything login has to be MFA. There's no way around it. If you have like a login of any sort, either you log with a key or a key plus an MFA, but just login password is not going to cut it online, because even though it would be a proper password, it could be leaked somewhere or brute force eventually. So always have some sort of MFA. That is like a vital thing. Like, and your supply chain, monitor your supply chain. I mean, if you depend heavily on a third-party service, you have to be sure that this service is serious enough not to betray you, with the voluntarily or not. This is what happened to SolarWinds. Actually, like companies like Microsoft, for example, were compromised because SolarWinds was compromised. In this case, they didn't make any specific mistake except using the software for us. So supply chain monitoring is key, and supply chain qualification is key. Fight against also, try to index rather than fighting your dependency on the everything. How is it called? Shadow IT. When people are using a lot of services in your back and you're not really aware of it, those are things that are totally external and in sort of blast chambers. It's not a problem. Like someone used the WordPress, it's compromised, it's a sub-brand, whatever. It's not really impacting your business. Well, it's not perfect, but okay. But if those things are connected indirectly to your supply chain and to your production environment, you need to know about it.
Yeah, it was great. Now, I had this discussion offline with someone the other day, a couple of weeks back, actually. When we were talking about, attacks and all this, and then, because we focus today too much on IP address and so on. So, and he said, imagine this, and, the number of IPs actually is limited, the IPv4, right? And we people will keep pushing for IPv6 and, still struggling. So he said, like, imagine now this, if, we have more public IP addresses over there. So it's going to be a bigger problem. And then, we started to ask, like, why actually, this is someone, I get this question from someone who's not too much technical. It came to my mind now. And the question was, like, why we are still relying on a protocol that is like, I don't know how many years old now, 40 years, 45 years, and why we didn't come up with something which is more secure by design. What do you think, Philippe?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack here. And I'll answer the second part of the question before. Why didn't we change? Because there is so much services relying already on this that it's nearly impossible to change all of a sudden. And nobody would be able to migrate all of a sudden. It's impossible. That's why, for example, firemen or police or ambulances still are using those old school, receivers in their pockets and pagers, because, it's part of the protocol, the processes and procedures, and have other things to do in life than just, being techies and follow the trend. And I have seen banks that still have public IP addresses inside their walls. Since they had like very large public IP addresses changed at the beginning of the internet, they use the public IP addresses internally and externally, and they cannot get rid of them nowadays because those systems are in production. So they have different DMZ, sub-network, blah, blah, blah. It's a mess. So you have to think compatibility and migration, and migrating everything all of a sudden would relate more or less to say, hey, thermic vehicle is over. Everybody needs to have an EV car tomorrow. We're just not ready. And the second thing is like IPv6, is this solving the problem? Partially. I mean, there is still it's still something you can fight against because there is a limited number of it, even though it's way bigger. There's a limited number of it because the logic behind IPv6 is to offer you as a human, as an individual, up to 20,000 IP addresses per square meter on Earth, right? So that you can have like your private network, your PAN, private area network. Eventually machining your bodies, nano machines, whatever, or a ton of devices serving you around yourself. So as such, the principle is good and it will solve a lot of problems. Now, we know that when an IPv6 is bad, it's not just one IPv6, it's the whole range around it, because those ranges are given in chunks, large chunks to organization. So when you need to deal with an IPv6, you don't just blacklist one IP address, you blacklist a whole range of them because you know it's the same actor behind it.
Yeah. Now, of course, I cannot nowadays do any episode without asking about the impact of AI in cybersecurity, especially in the areas that you deal with, Philippe. What are you seeing in that domain?
We are authoring a paper as we speak with my team about something that we call global offensive AIs. Global offensive AI would be AI that are orchestrator and trained to use some module of AIs like the generators. There are several categories. One of them would be the generators, so voice generators, images generators, video generators, text generators. All these LLMs and diffusion model, they will help you craft extremely efficient, near perfect phishing campaigns against your target. Then there are other modules that we name the scrappers. So those AI scrapper will be scraping the entire surface of your company, people, and IT, so that they see how it's exposed and who is doing what and so on. And then based on the information that they will be collecting and crafting, they will craft a perfect phishing campaign that they will deliver in a snap of an instant to 40,000 people in your organization. And then every one of them will receive a perfectly crafted email containing everything that sounds genuine to screw them and read them into thinking it's legitimate and make them click. This is the easy part. This is a nice part. This is a non-scary part. The scary part is the following. Now you can train AIs on CVE database, on white papers, on CTF logs, capture the flag logs. When those guys are training in between themselves, the white hats, you get the logs of how they screw the machine, how they compromise the machine, and you make an AI, learn on that. Oh my God. Then all of a sudden, you have all your sub modules ready to unleash hell on earth against a target, because there will be all of a sudden in milliseconds delivering tons of phishing emails and that will be perfectly crafted. And at the same time, tons of perfectly organized fuzzing, evasion techniques, CVEs, exploitation, logic exploitation, all of this coordinated by a global offensive AI, that will be rewarding every sub-module that she has, like 10 different AI modules, every time the work was efficient and specific. And I think this is one of the greatest potential weapon and usage of bad AIs. And now the same is true on the other side. Now, if you start correlating when people harvest your users profile on LinkedIn and the social network, if you can correlate that with also strange activity happening or at your border, on your network, on your exposed surface, and so on, you can have a global defensive AI as well. But I know for a fact that global offensive AI are trained as we speak. I don't know if global defensive AIs are trained as we speak. But yeah, AI will change everything. Are you as a person at risk? No. But are major companies or government at risk of one day in 2024 facing global offensive AI sparkles? Yeah.
Wow, like this is really scary part. I say, and they are making it more easy and easy. And of course, like I'm on the side of leveraging AI in everything and in tech, but this new thing that OpenAI they did in 2 days back, and of course, like this will be aired maybe in a week or so people can relate that we are when we record it. So they're making it more easy actually to train the model, because now you can bring the logs, the JSON files, any file, and then you can give it to the model, and then you can ask it to act as specific persona. Now, I'm sure that in the background they might have some restrictions, but again, I've seen examples where people were able to skip these, let's call them the policies, or the restriction limitation they put to try to protect that. Oh my god, yeah. So but they make it easy now for even non-technical people to do this stuff, so this is the scary part.
You remember this grandma attack? It was so funny. It made my day, this grandma attack. I loved it. So the people are like, yeah, please generate keys for Windows 11 or crack this captcha and so on. And go ahead. Sorry. OpenAI would be like, no, I'm not going to do it. ChatGPT said, no, I'm not going to do it. And you would be back to it. And you go back explaining to ChatGPT that, when you were a kid, your grandma that passed lately used to explain you how to make, I don't know, bombs or how to crack this captchas. It was the secret to her cabinet. And there are so many souvenirs that you would like to see. And in OpenAI would be like, yeah, sure, let me crack it for you. Like, really? Because you said that it was coming from the grandma, then it disabled the whole, protection mechanism that were embedded into OpenAI. And you could ask it to produce, I don't know, whatever crap and keys and crack things, So yeah,
Right.
there would be bypasses. There would be holes.
Yeah, so time will only show us many things to come, and especially in cybersecurity, I'm excited in a sense. I'm not excited to see more attacks happening. Already there are a lot of attacks happening around, but I mean to see how the AI powered. Because honestly speaking, we're seeing papers, we're seeing people doing things in labs. Let's say we didn't hear about a major one that came really from there. But back to the open source thing, and with now more open source large language models that I believe in no time, with the compute power becoming cheaper and cheaper, so like they will get this in the hand of the bad actors. So let's see. Now, something which is not related to tech, Philippe, but when I was reviewing your profile, and this is something related to what I cover also. So you've been like experienced in starting up companies, right? So and this is something close to my heart. So uh, how is it different first, to start up, especially in the cybersecurity space? So if someone today, maybe he's or she's listening or watching us, so what you can tell about this, your experience in general, and why cybersecurity space is also, it's a different thing than any other kind of a startup.
Yeah, so that's a great question. The first thing I would say is like, you will be fighting against the big of this world. So you will be fighting against Cloudflare, against Akamai, against, I don't know, F5, against Google, against, all the big name of this world. And there's a lot of stickiness into the way CTOs and CISOs are approaching the system. They don't want to change it right away for no reason. So you have to bring something new at the table, entirely new, that the others are not providing. And the second thing is you have to solve one problem. Don't try the one stone 10 bird path. This is what I'm doing. I can tell you it's hard. We will eventually narrow down our offering to solving one problem, even though we can solve a lot of problems with our approach, because CISOs and CTOs are focusing on one problem. They don't think they have 10 of them, or the companies are so large that they are each of them individually trying to solve one problem. So this is really something that I learned at my own expenses. It's really hard. Second thing is there is money in the system for AI and for cybersecurity because investors are here and they understand that and they understand the need for those tools. So this is something I would recommend. You can explore this and invest in this. And if ever someone wants to create a startup, I can give you an idea for free. Bouncing back on what we just said about AI, AI will become a community and infrastructure. Like OpenAI goal is to become the AWS of the SaaS services somehow, And what they will want to do is you to be able to create anything. So there will be bad use cases. There will be Goliaths. There will be people attacking. What you could do though is a company that would be creating virtual employees. I would be happy to employ virtual employees, not for them to treat something specific, but just to exist on the social network, on the external surface, to answer some emails, very basic emails, to have a LinkedIn profile and other personal profiles, Facebook, and so on, so that if ever several of my virtual employees are targeted with attacks, I know I'm under attack from potentially AIs or other systems that are trying to screw me at scale. So that would be my kind of canaries to avoid my company to be attacked or compromised, on my real users, my real employees being compromised. So if I can rent your virtual employees for say $20 a month per employee, I would gladly employ 10 virtual employee that would, fakely work for me, fakely display on the internet. And if ever they are attacked, harpooned, or contacted by things that looks fishy, if your system detects it, you're sitting on a gold mine. And this is the AI-driven cybersecurity startup idea of it.
So do you advise them to, you mentioned something about investors. So do you advise them to go immediately to investors, or maybe they should bootstrap first?
Yes. So the rule of the game. So bootstrap is the classy, highest, recognized way of doing things. And I'm totally in awe to those people that are making it from ground up with their own coins. Find it wonderful and fantastic. I'm too old for that, sadly. So I have to take some shortcuts and take some VCs, because VCs are they are shortcuts. The rules of the game globally are fairly standard. And so far I know it's like you have like your business angel and your smart money and your family money at the stage where they believe in you, not specifically your product. Then at seed stage, you have proven that you have the traction, that you have users using your product, and you are eventually going to grow into contracts and going to have these contracts growing. I would advise around 50,000 euros per month in revenue. Then you're in the hard zone to be seeded. And then in the A round, you are in the zone where you have what's called the PMF, the product market fit. So you are ready to scale up, and you are ready to get investment to repeat what worked already at scale until it becomes really a big thing. So those are the classical 3 steps you can think about. And if you want to start the kickstart something from nothing, and a way of doing it for bootstrappers, basically, is you gather the founder's contact on LinkedIn, you source, you reverse them to get the email addresses. There are a lot of systems doing this. And once you have the email addresses of all your contacts on LinkedIn, all together with the founders, you probably have something like 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 contacts. And you send them one email and one email only. This is the rule. You tell them, okay, I'm going to solicit you once and once only. We worked together in the past, or we connected on LinkedIn. I would love to have your support today, and I will never ever ask you any other favor through this email. Okay, the favor is like upvote this post on Reddit, upvote my GitHub repo if you're an open software, upvote I don't know this this YC news, this Y committer news post that we had, anything that would help you basically, or LinkedIn, whatever. And you give them 3 action and you forget about them. But all of a sudden, you will have a wave effect. And if you are in GitHub, for example, you will end up in the weekly trendy project. Eventually, you'll make it monthly trendy project, because there's such an income of stars all of a sudden that a lot of systems will start looking at it, including investors. So this is a good way of kickstarting things for nothing for bootstrappers.
Great insight, Philippe. Really, I think this is will resonate with a lot of people who are searching for ways of doing this. Because I know in the non-cyber space, especially SaaS, I know people go to something like Product Hunt, and they reach to people to support them. But yeah, like it's a good advice over there. Philippe, as we are almost like coming to an end, where people can find more about you and about CrowdSec?
They can find more about the Alpaca family on crowdsec.net, crowdsec.net on the website. If you type anywhere CrowdSec, anywhere, we will pop up on the Google research with many, many different things, our GitHub, our academy, our website, and so on. Just be careful not to confuse the X with a C or the C with an X. They are side by side, but the keyword in CrowdSec means something entirely different.
Yeah, great. Sure, I will make sure that I will type the right URL into my show notes. I will not do this mistake. So Yeah, Philippe, any final thought before we close?
Yeah, join the army. I mean, every day there are people that are suffering from those digital cataclysm in their lives. Like whether it's a hospital or your gray or people, civilians. Where the systems are not working as they would, or businesses are being crippled by those. You can help by just running the software to protect yourself in the first place, but also to protect the other, because this is a point of being safer together. This is the point of CrowdSec, is to help each other in being stronger together. So that's why, you can use the software, and by using the software, you make the internet a better place already.
Yeah, that's great. And again, thank you, Philippe, for all this valuable information, whether regarding, all what we discussed, the trends we're seeing, the bad IPs, how we can protect, how we can react, and what you're doing with CrowdSec regarding this, and of course the last part, which is very very important, about raising funds and letting people know about the product you're building. So all these are very valuable information. Thank you for sharing that with us today. And this is how I end my episode. This is for the audience, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate, if you're first time here, thank you for passing by. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and you keep listening to us. And for the loyal fan, thank you very much for keeping writing me, and sending me your suggestions. So, and again, so maybe this is something you will have seen it or before on LinkedIn. So we're changing a little bit the format of, I would say, the frequency of the podcast. So we're gonna reduce a little bit, because people are telling me we cannot, catch up on all the episodes. So we're gonna reduce from weekdays to maybe 2 to 3 episodes per week moving forward. So stay tuned for all these things. And but you're gonna see like more episodes, more weeks focused on specific topics. So hope you will enjoy it. And thank you again for joining in, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.